Yeah, so I'll answer your question about who I am. So my name is Jess, so you can call me Jess. And
Mhm.
I'm a CS major at Stanford. I'm in my third year. Um, and I'm originally from Las Vegas. And I think the environment that I'm currently in at Stanford overwhelmingly overwhelmingly like makes me really happy, and I'll express why. So coming from Vegas, it's an area with not a lot of technical innovation, and it wasn't really something that I realized was missing in my life until I got here. So
Mm,
kind of going back to who I was in Las Vegas, essentially. I mean, with most of us, my story truly begins with the sacrifices that my parents made for me. I think despite the backgrounds that they came from, they worked so hard. And even while sacrificing everything for me growing up, essentially, there was always a frontier that essentially that I should take risks and that I'm young and that I should make this life my own and I should create things. And also starting out young, my parents just instilled into me like an idea is the most valuable thing, like it is the most worth out of your time.
mm,
And I mean, I've always just loved building as a kid. My parents kind of never really cared what I did. And
mhm.
I'm really thankful for that. I spent a lot of time home alone as well, which I've got to give a lot of credit for. My parents worked a lot, and it gave me just a lot of time to be alone.
Gotcha.
And in many ways, I think that is what's been the most transformative. And in many ways, my parents also relied on me. Like they're both immigrants. So, like in terms of language, just like the different systems in the US, and also heavily emotionally as well. So, I think like people with similar backgrounds, you realize that you mature in many ways a lot faster than maybe you should, honestly. But I'm honestly so thankful for. I mean, it is like how it is, and it's made me who I am. And so I've always just loved crafting things, putting things together, as a kid. And I have always been very bold. And I have an older brother who has helped shape that for me. So he's 11 years older than me. And
Okay.
I honestly have to thank his maturity for pushing me. So I think a huge part of who I am is my lack of social awareness. Like I could not give a fuck. Like
That's brilliant
I
shit.
lost that somewhere. And honestly,
Brilliant.
I should probably get some of that back because it's probably embarrassing for my friends, but like I don't care.
Bro, fuck
Um,
it.
literally, I literally just remember my brother saying like, "Oh, I just like we were hanging, we were on a cruise." My brother was like, "Oh yeah, I just made friends with these 30-year-old people in the hot tub. Like, you couldn't do that. I bet you couldn't make friends." And I don't think he realizes this, but that like small memory has stuck with me for so long. And like
Mm,
through that experience, while also working as a hostess in a restaurant, like you realize it really doesn't matter what you say. So this there's this kind of fearlessness, social fearlessness, which has contributed to, I think, a lot of my actionability because many times people are paralyzed by what people think.
mm,
So I think that's a large component of who I am. And yeah, getting back to honestly where I was, basically growing up in Vegas.
mm.
Um, I always loved learning, but I never really liked school. So that's an interesting thing when it came to applying for colleges as well, which I can talk more about later, if you're interested. And so how that transformed is kind of when I gained more access to the internet, I just started looking at more and more resources. Maybe similar to you. I think you started engineering, like learning CS at a younger age. I learned pretty late on. So I started coding in junior year, like during the pandemic, honestly.
Mm.
It was just a way for me to channel all the creativity I had had ever since I was a kid. So that I loved. And I think the reason why I fell in love with engineering is there's a sense of powerlessness. Like it's an extreme frustration of you realize there's a problem, whether personal in the world, through justice, whatever it is. You feel like you can't do anything about it. Even if you were to think of a solution, you can't. But when you're technically capable, you're able to take the problem into your own hands and actually do something about it. You're smiling. You gotta tell me what you think
Bro,
about all
because why are we the same person, bro? I love that shit so much. I'm like, bro, you go people like, oh, wait, that shit sounds mad familiar.
this.
Dog.
No,
And it's like,
I can hear the conviction while you speak as well. So like I figured we were along the same
bro,
line.
twin for real. Because it's like, bro, oh my God. Like I need to fix this shit and I'm going to find a way how. And it's like,
Yeah,
this, okay, like engineering is really, this is how you do it. Or like, this is how you gain the ability to be able to do that to anything. And I'm like, fuck
100%.
yeah, give me that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Like I don't know, like ever since I was a kid, there's just this immense feeling of responsibility
Yeah.
of not just like my own life, but kind of what I can do for everyone else around me and extend that even further. And that's what's so great about technology is you have that scaling and you can reach people you would have never met before it. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, it comes from like feeling personally powerless in your own personal life, maybe in upbringing and the environment, whatever it is. But it is such a powerful emotion. And you probably know what I'm talking about. It's like you feel it in your body. It's like fire. Um,
Bro.
I can't explain it well enough, but you know what I mean.
It's like a I don't even like the embodiment of I call it like it's a hunger like I need like I don't know like I remember read it like in my essay like I eat sleep and breathe this shit every day like it's like a I can't turn it off, bro. It's actually so beautiful. Oh dang, did my Wi-Fi cut out?
Last
Nice,
time.
nice test. All right, cool, we're back. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I lost momentum, but I guess like to that point, you said you started in junior year. So like, what did that look like? I guess like that transformation end up looking like in terms of like applying to colleges.
Yeah, I think it it's really funny. So I came in junior year. Um, well, I'll share first my mentality on college coming into that point. I think my parents had always believed in me ever since I was young. I mean, I think you experienced a very similar thing. We both at very young ages excelled in whatever environment we were in. And my parents had always pushed me like, hey, you're gonna go to the best school.
Mm.
You're going to the top school. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. I am. Like, I don't think I was young enough to understand the probability of what that actually looks like. And honestly, that naivety probably was the best.
Oh,
It's a huge
yeah.
mentality that I have in life is like kind of that unreserved optimism and confidence takes you so far in a lot of ways because honestly, the biggest step is just doing it
Yeah,
and
bro.
that's what thrusts you forward. And so, actually, kind of funny. My dad, so my parents they speak Chinese. Like in Chinese, Yale is like yellow, or like I don't think I got it wrong. So if I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to yellow, or like when I was a kid, I would say that, and they're like, Yale. Anyway, so coming into high school, I'd always like felt really reassured, like, yeah, it's gonna work out for me. Come senior year, it's like, "Oh, shit, this is really real." And I think to get into the statistics of things, it's like, "Okay, what is the likelihood that someone like me with my background actually can get in?" And, like, even so that's my thought in terms of, like, the schools themselves. I also had a really similar internal questioning of what route I would go into. And for you, it was pretty clearly engineering, but I didn't know that until much later on. I think I was able to recognize really well what my strengths were. And a lot of it came from leadership experiences and just organizing things and building and crafting. I didn't know quite how to put that together. And so I genuinely would just watch YouTube videos of like, hey, what's right for me? Um, I found like the there's this one YouTube video that I remember so clearly. I was watching it when I was making some food or something in the kitchen. Um, and it was a tier list of different engineering majors or something like that. And then through that, there was something called like management and technology. And I realized it's like, oh, yes, I love that. I get to kind of be a leader in some sense, have that autonomy to create and build a team, a strong team, while also interfacing with innovation. And
Mm.
that kind of led me to cheesy, very cheesy, but I took the CS 150 class
For real. Like,
X, something like that from the Harvard course, and it was an intro on Python. And not that the course was particularly inspiring, but because Las Vegas itself isn't super technical, nor was my high school. It was like, oh yeah, I'm a coder now. And I think that like blind confidence um allowed me to really push through. It's like, okay, now I'm gonna take this more seriously and I'm actually gonna do this. I
mm,
think because I was in an environment where it wasn't super common, it almost it made me gravitate towards it even more. And then I took AP CS principles, I believe is like the first one, and it genuinely was just so fun to me. Like it was JavaScript. It's an intro to JavaScript. What we were doing was just so fake. Like it was just fake coding. Not super impressive by any means, but I just had so much fun. Whenever it came down to working on the class or coding, I was just completely locked in. And I think the way that high school is structured in many ways, it made me lose interest in kind of the activities we were doing, but not this. And it was just electric.
mm,
I think like once I started to be able to putting things together with programs, I realized, oh, I can optimize so many things with the new skills I've learned. And I honestly, a large part of why I ended up choosing CS is for that impact reason, is like I have the capability to take the solution into my own hands. Like you very similarly, we're both very interested on the entrepreneurial business side of things. Um,
yeah.
very technical. So I think we like you probably realize that there's this hidden mastery and like gem in being technical while building. Is like you know what you're doing, you know what your vision looks like, and becoming more technical, like fascinated, like being caught up with the research, the latest technology, allows you to kind of have a vision in the first place. Like it's, and more than anything, it's just really inspiring when you're put in positions where you're learning new things about what's being built in the world.
Yeah. I think like more than anything else, that might be like the single like I like it's like trying to think of the number a billion. Like I can do it kind of, but like it still never really hits you. And that's like the same that same relationship is how I feel with the fact that like so much shit gets discovered at MIT. So it's like, oh, they're just doing like the groundbreaking research like down the hall. And I'm like, I walk
Yeah.
past it and I'm like, oh wait, hold on, like double take, like, oh shit, that's the first. They're like, oh yeah, that's the first fucking like what's the cheetah bot. I'm like, I seen that shit on YouTube when I was like 12, bro. Like, say you swear to God.
No, I know. And now coming here, I mean, we're both such at like very like technically successful schools,
Yeah.
where a lot of it is the emphasis. Like the joke here is like everyone's a CS major. Um, and it truly is the place. Like, for example, we have like a little hike near campus called the Dish. Uh,
Mm,
and the kind of trail is so Apple Park. Have you seen
mm.
it's in Menlo? Yeah, or like in this area, have you seen the Apple Park, like how it's designed?
I don't think I have.
I've hired the architect of the same person who designed the Dish. So I'm like walking there one day and I'm like, holy shit, this is the place. Like it's like an overwhelming feeling of looking at of the environment and realizing this is where you build cool shit. Yeah, like the frat house nearby where I live right now is where Stanford out of. So it's just like small things like that of entrepreneurial stories that are really inspiring here. And sounds like exactly the story that you just said with the research.
Yeah, wait. So, question, right? Like, when do you think, because you mentioned like you get into coding in junior year, when do you think the interest in the entrepreneurial side and like founding came into the picture?
The entrepreneurial side has, I think, always been in me. I am trying to think where I would really pin it down to. I've just always whatever I do, whatever problem I'm solving at that phase in my life, I always try to optimize and scale it. And I think that's the essence of entrepreneurship, especially in startups, is like, how do you take a problem that's being solved and scale it so that you're solving even more people's problems? Um, and that was kind of always the case. I've always loved also making products as a kid.
Mm.
I think the entrepreneurial side or like the business person side of that is like I would just also try to make a profit off of whatever solution sometimes. Whether, yeah, exactly. Um, and also, I mean, maybe you feel the same way because I heard you say something similar is like, why am I not just doing sweet? Or why am
Why not just go quant?
yeah, why not just go quant? It's very similar like that it's not about the money, but it is about the scale of your impact as a person. Like when you're working at a company, you're working under an organization and following the vision that they want to execute. And oftentimes, especially if it's a bigger organization, you're moving really slowly. There's no
Mm.
autonomy to exercise your own creativity and your own vision in many ways. It's limited, at least. And when you're building, there's just nothing more beautiful from being able to take something 0 to 1. I don't know if you've read 0 to 1.
By Peter Thiel. I
Yeah,
was gonna ask you the same thing. Yes, bro. Oh my god. Yeah, like
it's
trying to get that
really fun.
vertical movement like I bro.
It's a great, great book. And I think like there's nothing, you know how we talked about that deep, just involuntary feeling of like drive to
Mm,
that we've had so long for our lives. I feel
mhm.
it so much in inspiration too. Like I feel this exact same fire when I become inspired by different problems. And that is exactly what going here to want to accomplish is like I'm just so fascinated by like what are the technologies that are transforming our modern day world and how we behave and interact with each other because of it. So have you read yeah, I know there's a really good book also called The Diffusion of Innovation and it's essentially like a series, a collection of case studies of different adaptations of technology, whether it's the iPhone, different keyboards, you hear the success and the failure stories. It's really
Fusion of innovation. I'm not gonna lie, that's going straight into my Audible.
that's yeah. Any
Uh,
books for me?
yeah, I was about to say like, okay, I gotta give one back. Okay, I would say most recently, like the most recent book where I feel like it's fundamentally shifted my perception on things was Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, specifically in regards to like the way I thought about certainty and like as a result, like because Thinking in Bets is basically like the core thesis of the book is that essentially everything is a bet. Like there is no certainty. It's just games of chance that we're playing, and like some things are more certain than others. For
Yeah.
example, I'm making like we're both making a bet that like getting like becoming technically skilled in like CS and slash engineering is a worthwhile. Like it's going to like I'm betting the time and like energy and effort that I'm putting into this degree and like learning the skill because I'm thinking it's going to give me outsized returns of like a better life for myself, more like ability to do what I want, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not completely certain. There is a chance you learn on this stuff and then like we get overtaken by AI robots you never knew. Like you couldn't have guessed that you're cooked. And it's like, oh,
Yeah. Sorry, you said making a bet?
thinking in bets.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I clarified. Imagine I get back to you like, yeah, man, I just read Making a Bet. It's ding. Okay, that sounds really interesting. Yeah. Is it kind of like a quantitative analysis on how you make decisions in your life?
I don't know if it's quantitative. It's more so, I think, I forget what she has a PhD in, but she has a PhD in, I think, like maybe psychology and or sociology. But this is a book written by an ex poker player. So it's like,
Oh my God. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is, I guess, quantitative analysis, but it's like applied to that specific area and then like magnified.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How's your relationship with risk? How do you view it in terms of the risks you take in your own life?
I would say, like, as a personality, like when I think to describe myself, I would say risk averse. just like I don't know, but that's just like tendency to be like pump brakes. But
Yeah.
in terms of my actions, I guess I am take. I mean, like the engineering stuff is like this is my sure bet, and then like me branching out to do like okay, the content stuff is like this is my version of risk. Also, specifically the way that I'm approaching it, there is a good chance I may like cut off some opportunities by choosing to like candidly express my thoughts. But that's like a risk I'm willing to take, I guess. So that's such a like non-answer. I was about to say like I don't know. I guess moderate, like moderately. I mean, yeah, okay, because I just don't see it as a lot to myself because I'm always trying to push myself to take more risks slightly. But in terms of, yeah, I do like, yeah, like you mentioned, like that social like courage or like not necessarily caring about like, okay, they say no or whatever. I guess in that regard, like I'm pretty outgoing when necessary. So
Yeah.
I take a lot of, yeah, so technically it takes a lot of risk there, but like I don't see it as risk. But I do see
Ah,
us, like I do see someone as like someone who's like more averse, like, oh no, I can't go talk to her. She's gonna like, it's like, bro, shut up and go. But I don't, so
yeah.
that's why I'm like, that's not a risk no more to me, bro. It's like I do that whenever.
I'm gonna repeat what you said to me earlier. Why are we the same person? Like saying that, like I completely, I like the exact phrasing. It's like, yes, by some means, like doing some of the things we do are classified as risk, but like genuinely thinking of it, like I don't think of anything I do as a risk. Like it's all very calculated. Like I'm not making risky moves. I'm like only making moves that I think I'm gonna win. Um, so yeah, yeah,
And
feel
it's
that.
like, yeah, it seems like, yeah, just like that change, shift of lens. And it also goes back to another thing you said, like most people get caught in that paralysis of like not even wanting to start. And so I wanted to ask you like specifically in regards to like starting the content, because I have a lot of people like, especially now because I'm like gaining attraction, I guess. But it's like I have friends like, hey bro, I want to start XYZ. I'm like, where just go? And it's like, I
Yeah.
guess what helped you overcome that anxiety, I guess, if at all?
But let me clarify. So do you mean you said starting content?
Yeah, like making more of your journey public slash documenting.
Okay. Okay, great, great. So I started documenting for myself
Mm,
3.5 years ago, almost sometime in 2021, where for every single day I'd record what I did. Sorry,
mm.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you keep like a journal? Because it's not well, it sounds like you're doing it with the videos regardless, but like, do you journal at all?
This is my journal, honestly.
Mm,
And the reason why, I mean, at least behind why I do it, because I think the why I'm able to be courageous in starting is because I believe in the documentation process
mm,
so intensely. And it started off as like when I was a kid, I think you had kind of this paradigm shift as well, some point. As a kid, I realized that I was observing that my character would change over time based on the events that would happen to me or like the circumstance of life that I'm currently in.
mm,
Essentially, I'm like, why am I waiting for myself to change? Why am I not changing? And I think highly ambitious people like us, we realize that we have weaknesses, things that we want to do, dreams that we want to pursue. And that means you have to become the person that achieves all of those things. And you're constantly working to be that person. And I felt like I kept having that conversation with myself. It's like, okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try XYZ. I have ABC weaknesses. I want to target these, and this is how. I might have that
mm,
conversation repeatedly with myself. And I try for some while, but it was honestly hard to be accountable. And it's honestly not a lack of discipline whatsoever. I think what people get wrong, honestly, is that they have some sort of goal, they work towards it, but it doesn't work out. Like they fail within the first few days because it's hard to start out, right? And
yeah.
I think a lot of people get discouraged. But one thing that has always applied in my life is it is never, when there are failures like that, it's just a failure in the system.
Mm,
So you just got to try something else that works for you. And so I experimented with different ways of keeping myself accountable. That meant like probably the most embarrassing thing I've ever done was I really needed to do more work. So I'd go on live on my Instagram and do work, like not even look at my phone, just do work. And I was gonna do that every single day. And that didn't work. I tried doing YouTube, but that didn't work. It's just the barriers to certain solutions that I came up with were too high.
Mm,
And because like there's editing, right? And then
yeah,
there's a ton of stuff to keep track of. And the way that I found to be most helpful was to make TikTok videos of my day,
for real.
everything I do, because I think so much of process makes progress. But how are you going to make progress if you can't look back on the previous day and tell what's wrong with it by every single minute and what you can improve? So TikTok was just so easy to start on. And it was
Mm,
also great that there was no social component to it as well. It's like, hey, I can start a secret account. No one ever has to know about this.
mm.
So in that sense, there was that, and then there was like what, three loyal followers from day one, and honestly, they were all I needed. Like these random strangers on the internet, and that was the accountability that I needed. And so that was a system that worked for me, honestly, really well. I mean, I still do it to this day. So I think that speaks for itself. And now the second part of kind of getting started with actually posting is I think you gain a lot of confidence through competence.
Mm,
A lot of it you can fake, but a lot of it can be gained from just reassurance that you are competent. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, I gained a lot of confidence in posting my videos because I believed in the quality of videos that I was making. And I
mm,
think once you have put in a lot of effort over refining your art, content creating, for example, for a period of time, you become really confident with and proud of kind of the art you're creating. And you're much more willing to put it out there for the world to see in that sense. But what I've learned more and more by posting is genuinely that like who gives a fuck mentality is like the benefits outweigh the cost by so much, sure. And also like yeah, I mean that's it. That's literally it. And to start content, for me, I'll say it's a lot easier. I know
mm,
people want to make different content, and I think you might have more advice in that sense. But for me, content comes really easily because I'm just recording what I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm not going out of my way to say anything, or anything. So that's why it's also really easy for me
mm.
because my content is just what's happening in my life already. So I think make it easy for yourself, find a system that works and know why you're creating content. Like what value are you creating?
Yeah, high key, like to that point of like the confidence comes from competence. It's like maybe you have imposter syndrome because you are an imposter. It sounds kind of mean, but it's like I'm thinking of like the same way you mentioned, like I'm not really going out of my way to say anything that I don't like. I do this. Like I it's literally like the school shit, like, oh I yeah, it's like specifically like enumerated. I think I had heard it from like the way Alex Ramosi says it is pretty succinct of like state the facts and tell the truth of
Yeah.
like I go to MIT. This is the exam I took. This is what I did. Like this is like yeah. You
Yeah.
have like this is me. This is the time lapse of me working on this thing. All right, cool. Here.
Yeah, yeah, literally. And it goes along to the same lines of you mentioned the imposter syndrome, right? It's like, great, you don't feel competent. Okay, go get competent. Like, what? It seems like the correct solution there. Um, and I think that's a huge philosophy for my life as well. Um, yeah, I think people who want to start off and don't, maybe there's like a certain anxiety where it's like, oh, I should be doing this, I want to do this, but maybe there's some fear holding them back. One of the founders of Twitch, I heard him speak once and I was able to ask him the question, like, in the face of problems, like, what is your thought process? And first of all, he's like, well, one, I love problems. Two, the way it is like, what problem is fucking me the most right now? Like, it's about prioritizing what matters to you and figuring out the solution that addresses that number one priority. And you work down the list, and then there you go. You're solving all of your problems. So, like, if you want to make content, why? And does that outweigh your other problems?
I guess to that, like, what would you say? is your like biggest problem or like the biggest problem you're looking to solve?
That's a very general question. Do you want to clarify in any way?
Like, I don't know,
And
like my personal answer
yeah,
is
yeah.
I'm currently trying to solve for personal freedom, which
Mhm.
is like also pretty vague, but more specifically, like the medium by which I'm trying to attain that is money. And so
Yeah.
the biggest problem I'm trying to solve broken down well is like getting down to like, is like okay, you have the lofty like objective and then like okay, steps. Currently it's like the step I'm on is like skill acquisition because like I'm in college and stuff. Like this is when you
Yeah.
get good at the game first and then okay, now you can go exploit that you're good at the game to go do stuff. But yeah, biggest problem I'd be like, hmm. Yeah, I guess the question is like, what are you oriented towards most? Yeah, and mine I think is freedom.
Okay. I love that. I think, well, there's a lot of problems in my life, and I wouldn't change anything about it. I think I'm the type of person where there will always be problems in my life. Not self-caused, but because I will always find problems to solve.
Yeah,
And if it means it's outside of myself. I mean, it's just that's what it means when you want to grow, is you'll find problems and you'll fix those. Um, and my biggest problem, honestly, one of my biggest priorities is the problems I like to phrase in questions for myself. So, my biggest question to myself then in that regard is, so I'm the founder of World 37, and my biggest question to myself is, okay, how do I execute this at the highest level? And as a first time founder, I don't have much experience. So there's a lot of problems that come with that, as in, like, okay, what does that actually look like? What problems do I need to avoid? Uh, how am I supposed to form a team? How am I supposed to build this product? So many questions, so many problems for me to solve, which is honestly the most exciting part of it. But you've definitely built something before that's probably your baby. I mean, most founders, it's like, we feel I feel such a strong responsibility towards my idea and that I need to execute it. Like, there's just it's so important to me in the world, I believe, that this vision gets executed. And I think when you care about something so deeply, almost everything is oriented towards that. And so the biggest problems that I'm solving right now is, how do I execute this at the best of my capability to be able to reach the people that I want to?
my bad if I like am repeating the question, but could you like expand a bit on like what the mission of World 37 is specifically?
Yeah. So sorry. Can you, what do you mean by that exactly?
I guess like what is the idea behind the app? Like, am I like misunderstanding?
No, not at all. I don't think you're repeating yourself at all. This is so let's talk
Okay,
about talk
yeah,
about
okay, real.
So I'm building World 37, and what it is it's a 3D interactive storytelling mobile game.
Okay.
And so let me ask you,
Mhm.
um, are you familiar with Harry Potter? Did you grow up on it at all?
I
Okay.
that was that like third grade. I like binge read the entire series. They got me.
Yeah, right. And so it's this idea of being able to immerse yourself in a fantasy world, right? That's just a
Yeah,
core human desire that is that's important to a lot of people. And I mean, for both of us, we probably were just really big fans, as long as with many other people. But there's kind of this higher level of obsession over these fantasies. It's like, I'm talking about the people, the hundreds of thousands of people who have written Wattpad stories on Harry.
yeah,
Like, it is an undeniable, almost like a very unserious human nature desire to want to immerse yourself into these fantasy worlds, being able to play as one of the characters, be involved in the story. And it's like it caters to that exact same nature that what television shows have as well, as you're able to find yourself in this alternate reality for whatever personal reason that that viewer has. And largely, like, a lot of that demographic is also in romance as well. Like, you've heard of Wattpad, I'm guessing.
yeah. Like, bro, like it's actually very interesting. Like, as a result of like reading all of those because like all of those like fandom type series, like Percy Jackson, Harry
Yes.
Potter, like Divergent, Hunger Games, like they all have like very devoted like fan bases that like that Tumblr era, crazy. I'm not gonna lie. And like I was there. I'm not gonna lie. Like I was like, I'm like, interesting. And then that, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think you were mentioning like being alone a lot and having access to the internet was a very interesting. It's just like, damn, y'all niggas are interesting.
Yeah, and there's so many people who this like ideology caters towards a lot more intensely than myself, honestly.
Mm,
But somewhat being part of it, I saw a lot of problems. So as you'll see, like there's this gap between the fantasy worlds that people actually want to live in versus the technology that current industry standards actually cater towards. Um,
mm,
so what I mean by that is, I don't. So what I mean by that is there are simulation games and there are interactive stories to really narrow down on people who want to experience immersive realities. And simulations, like I'm sure you've heard of the game Sims 4.
yeah.
People love designing these characters, like designing a world in which they themselves are or fictional stories are. Like people are obsessed with the designing component, not necessarily the game itself, but with the designing component.
Mm.
And that's part one of the hypothesis that I have for World 37. Part two of it is, have you heard of episodes by chance?
The app.
Yeah, the mobile game, the
Yeah.
like trashy mobile game with the most horrific ads.
Yeah. And they're all about just like, oh no, I'm cheating on my
Yeah.
boyfriend with his third.
Oh my God, your boyfriend is cheating on you. What are you gonna do? Choice A, slap the girl. Choice B, slap him. I don't know. It's just crazy. But I found that there's a lot of with the work that I'm doing um, as a CS student, I found that there's a lot of questions that you could be asking to kind of optimize those worlds. And there's a gap between it's not immersive enough. And so World 37, like I said, it's a 3D interactive storytelling game. And the way that it's different is it comes in three key innovational components. Um, and one of which is narrative branching. So remember, my
Mm.
overall priority is just to make something that is so entertaining and immersive. Um, and
Like bringing that dream to life. Like
yeah,
you being Harry Potter, got you.
exactly. So it's narrative branching. So if you think of movies nowadays, books, or kind of even these interactive stories themselves today in the way that they exist, it's a
Mm.
plot. Like
Yeah, it's like linear. It's like
happens,
different.
then this, then this. Right. It's all fixed and predetermined. But with kind of generative agents, dynamic deployment of scenes like animations and talking and whatever it is, dialogue, you're able to have this immersive reality. So there's that narrative branching component.
Mm.
Uh, Secondly, there's the generative agent component. So actually, a really interesting research came out of Stanford. It's a paper on this game simulation called Smallville. And they kind of introduced this topic of generative agents. So they're kind of, think of NPCs, but with a memory and kind of emergent behaviors. So simulating believable human lifelike actions. Um, and that's something I'm trying to recreate for the sake of making a more immersive, personalized atmosphere. And
I,
thirdly,
I was just saying like I understand.
yes. And the third component towards that is the dynamic scene deployment. So I think there's so much that can be done in terms of game development and entertainment with the technology, emergent technology now. Like you're able, yeah, I'll stop there. Any thoughts so far or questions? And then I can continue on about kind of like how this started and my vision for it.
Yeah, and I was also gonna say like mention okay, part one is Harry Potter, but have you read Ready Player One?
I haven't read it. You're gonna hate me, but I watched the movie.
Okay, but like similar, like the premise is the premise. You feel me? But I guess like from like having seen the movie, I don't even yeah, I don't think I seen the movie. I did read the book though. But same thing though. But basically, it's like did like what problems did you see, if at all, with their system, or would you just want to be like, okay, let's make Ready Player One, but better?
So the problems that I saw were mostly my competitors. So like the names that I just listed for the game platforms, they're not the only ones, but they're kind of the ones that come to the list at the top. There's just basically general games of interactive stories and simulations. And the gaps that I found in both, so let's start with the interactive stories because I think my philosophy more aligns with them, is
Mm,
that it's not interactive at all, really. It just, you're able to make choices, but because choices kind of all lead to the same outcome, there's really no personalization
mhm,
the way to phrase that. It's not believable in many ways because your actions don't have an impact on the world. So that was a huge problem for me. And additionally, like another philosophy behind that is two. So the writing and then the reader side of things, of the output of scale. So in terms of writing these types of stories and interactive stories is there's a high barrier to it. And with the way that I'm building it, it makes it very democratized, I should say. It makes it easier for you to combine your own creativity and create your own stories in that sense, create your own
mm,
simulation. And on the other hand, because of the streamlined process that I've created through World 37, stories are being able to they're produced at a much higher scale than they're able to do manually and at a higher quality as well. So in those senses, that's what's different. And then finally, like the other side of things is the simulation side. It is, I
mm,
don't know if you've ever played Sims, but basically people who play it, you realize it's a very hollow game. Most people, like say you spend 100 hours on Sims, okay? 100, like 92 of those hours are going to be on designing the characters in the world. 8 hours of it is going to be playing, because there's no kind of essential storyline. There's no narrative, but people love creating these fiction worlds and also seeing themselves as a character potentially. And so kind of bridging those gaps with being caught up on the research that's being done in generative AI through agents and the different kind of um, generation done in game development, I was able to bridge those and then find this solution, which was like fine-tuned so many times through the
mhm,
product market fit process. So that was essentially the process
mhm,
and what I'm addressing with World 37. And it's funny because it started off as just something I wanted for myself. But that entrepreneurial side in me, like we talked about earlier, it's like I started really committing to the technology that fueled this, I realized that this has a large chance of influencing the research that is available out there today. Like
mm.
the type of data and the metrics and results that I will achieve through this platform will advance LLMs
Got you.
and kind of the entertainment industry and how they use AI. Like a lot of the systems and architecture that I'm building now kind of sets it up for that direction. And so there's this possibility, large possibility and plan of scalability for the technology I'm using. And the way I like to put it, I actually learned this the other day in this class called Infrastructure at Scale. Cool class at Stanford. And they gave us an example which really speaks out to how I'm feeling about this whole process of building a game is a lot of you kind of have this quadrant of high risk and then impact and scale when you're
Mm,
building something. So like for example, like some climate tech is gonna be at high scale and also high risk. But a lot of innovation, 0 to 1, is first done in the lower quadrant where the risk is lower and the scale is higher. And namely, that is the entertainment that essentially I'm working in right now. The work
mm.
that I'm making now, it's low consequence in many ways, but it is really high scale. So the insights that I'm able to attain, essentially, I'm hoping to transform into outside of just this industry. So
Got you. So
it's definitely like just transformed over time into something bigger than I could have ever imagined.
yeah. And I think an important like meta thing to point out there is the fact that like you mentioned that thing of like I did it for myself first, and then I added on like the sharing aspect. I think that's where like the best creations come from because you're not like I feel like I don't know, like you see in like when Hollywood tries to make original stories because they don't is because like if you're making it like oh I need this to appeal to mass audiences, it's I feel like it's fundamentally like handicapped compared to I made this personally for me, and then that's going to resonate with all those other people that you were like when you I don't know, it's just like it also goes back to that like oh fuck what other people think type energy because like the more that you do the low key not worse because you do need feedback, but like at its essence it should be a self-serving activity that you therefore that you then decided to share.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's two components to what you just said, and I totally agree. Um, the one side of it is like, I think it's so important that you really understand the problem for the
Mhm.
sake of it being a successful startup or business idea, vision. Because a lot of the times, especially, I don't know if this is as applicable for you, but especially for me, surrounded in Silicon Valley, essentially, there's a lot of people who are looking for solutions to build. Like because building a startup is the hype right now or like the econ of the 90s. It's like um there's a lot of people going into it looking for solutions. And I think in many ways that is valid because maybe or sorry, that is never valid. You should never be looking for a solution. You should always be I think sometimes that can be successful. I mean, a lot of the times that is actually successful. But for me, it's so great that this is a problem that I've personally had. And so I'm able to really work and build the product from a problems angle rather than a solutions because I understand my audience and customers so well. But don't get me wrong, that also took a lot of work to get over like being open-minded and realizing my problems might not be everyone's as well. Like it obviously rationally the best thing to do there is to do customer research and figure out if other what other people's problems are. Um, and then on the flip side, the second component to what you said is when you're building something, you have to have so much conviction and discipline and resilience. Like you're going to get so many no's, not everyone is going to believe in it. And one of the most inspirational stories I've heard is um, from an LED optic cable producer, and he worked for 8 years before getting his first paycheck. His co-founder left him within 3 years and was like, "Yeah, man, I just don't believe in this." And now they're the lead producing like manufacturer in those fields in those domains. Um, it just takes a really long time trusting yourself and what you're building and a lot of just guts. Like stupidness, guts, just all together, all of that. Just like and that means it has to be in something you really believe in. And in that same sense, it's like, why are you the one to make this happen? Essentially. Like why is it you that makes this and not anyone else? Like why are you like in a position to especially execute this over anyone else. And so that's why I think it's so important that it's something that it's personal to you.
Yeah. Mm. Damn. Okay, I'm a better branch, and I just want to make sure I remembered both. One is like I wanted to ask you like to elaborate on that problems thinking versus solutions thinking. Like, what is the distinction to you?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of people go through the process of trying to build a company. And sometimes they have a hypothesis in their mind of what people want. It's like, hey, there's this idea. It sounds super great. And it's like, yeah, it just makes sense, you know? But like, okay, who actually would use that? Who actually would pay for that? Who actually has that problem? Not only does it have to be a problem, but it has to be a problem that other people care so deeply about that they're willing to use your product, pay for your product in many ways. Um, so just mainly tackling that question. One thing that they teach us a lot here and that you honestly read a lot about in books, especially in like Lean Startup, The Four Steps to Epiphany, anything along those lines of books,
Yeah.
is that you need to listen to what people actually need. And sometimes people are more solutions oriented because they want to create something that's sounds great,
Yeah.
um, not what people actually need. That's why, like, for me, despite me having such high interest in the technical components of my game, my
Mm,
number one priority right now, at least for right now, before my plans of scaling, is make this the most entertaining game, make it the top in this domain. And in that sense, that means I have to pull back from my own excitement. Like, oh my God, I want to implement this XYZ, because like that would just be so cool, to work with all of this new technology and be at the forefront of it. But it's like, that's not my priority. That's not the priority of the people that I'm catering towards. So
mm,
that's the difference, is putting the people's needs first and addressing those problems, not the problems you believe to be there.
yeah. I think the like I forget exactly where I heard it phrased like this, but I think I know what you mean. Like the people in Silicon Valley are like very solutions oriented. Like the same way they would have described it is like a lot of people end up like they go find their one special like, oh, I made this, I polished this shiny rock, like I worked all like I was alone, like I didn't listen to anybody, I just made the solution, but look, now I'm gonna try. And then they try to like learn marketing or sales, like, hey, I'm gonna try to create like desire for this solution that was never actually there, like you mentioned, like there was never actually a problem. I'm just trying to make people want it. And it's like the difference is like you got to go look for a hole, not a rock. You need like instead of like and it's like, oh, real. I think like yeah, I'm like that's how I connected to like, oh, that's problem and solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's just, it's a matter of being honest with yourself, if anything. It's like you don't, I mean, in these books that it sounds like you've read, it's really just a process of talking to people, that you want to like serve essentially with your product, and seeing what they want and then making the proper like, deductions from that, and not lying to yourself, because and not just creating something that you want or that sounds cool.
Real. Damn, I forgot. Like I had done this, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget the other branch. I definitely forgot the other branch.
Like you could think of it as in like the logical, like outside, like for the sake of a successful startup, and then the second sense is for yourself. Like,
Mhm.
what do you care so deeply about that you would prioritize it over anything else? Yeah.
Real.
It's got to just be a problem that you care about. And I mean, it doesn't have to be one that you've had for since childhood, like me. It could be one that like you gain through industry, or like that you just purely learn about it, or like that you're, yeah. So it comes differently for different people.
Real. This is a slight shift, but not too far.
Yeah,
Like
please. Take it wherever.
other, yeah. I guess I wanted to ask, like, what other like fiction books did you really like growing up?
What other
Like
fishing?
fiction, like stories. Yeah, like which stories really speak to you?
Oh man, honestly, I did not, I can't remember. Is that
Mm.
bad? For as much as like I'm into it, for what I'm building, actually, I don't think that's necessarily where my origins start. Um,
Mm.
I think like for me, what it meant to immerse in fantasy worlds was like, growing up, I would make my own dolls and like create different scenario, like improv with friends and stuff like that. And that's how that manifested for me.
Got you.
Yeah.
Oh, and honestly, that's so like I don't know, like resonant slash like fitting. Like it fits really nicely that like the core aspect of what you're trying to create is that it's like self-generated slash like democratized like that. Because it's like that seems as opposed to like I'm reading the Harry Potter linear stories, like no, I'm creating it improv. And it's like I want
Yeah.
to feel that same like you also created improv.
Let me tell you. So it's called World 37, right?
Hmm.
Does 37 make you think of anything at all? It doesn't
Prime
have to.
prime number, I think.
That is true, I think. Um, so you're familiar with AlphaGo, right?
I'm not. It was AlphaGo.
Okay, so essentially it was a project by Google DeepMind, and in 2016, okay, let me backtrack a little. So there's this ancient Chinese game called Go.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Okay, and this game is notoriously hard for computers to solve because of the matrix multiplication that's involved. And So for the longest time, people have been trying to create machines to defeat humans in different games, whether it's like chess or whatever it is. And so one especially tough challenge that no one was able to crack was to beat a human in Go, like to beat a master in Go. And so essentially, Google DeepMind, they created a team to train a model to beat someone, beat the master of Go. So in 2016, there was this kind of history-making match, Go match, and it would go down in AI history. And so essentially, the model that they had created played Lee Sedol, the current champion of the world at the time. And at this point, like no model had beaten any Go, I think, expert player ever. But this model slightly was. So it worked its way up to play against Lee Sedol. And
Mm,
how it works is I believe they played 5 matches. And in the third match, on move 30 on move 37, something
mm,
revolutionary happened. Essentially, the AI model made a move that no human would have ever made. And it's super counterintuitive based off of how we expect these models to perform. And so, this move, it ended up being ingenious. Like Lisa Dole was so confused because you realize these people understand the game. They memorize kind of whatever moves you can make. And he had never seen this before. He literally leaves the room because he's like, what the hell? And it he revealed like yeah, like literally what the hell. He comes back and like everyone is like, wow. And coined it as AI creativity. Move 37 was a creative move by AI. No move that any human would have ever made. And so World 37 is a world of creativity.
mm. That's so fucking dope. I'm not gonna lie, that's so cool.
And so the reason why I brought that up is you're talking about this democratization of writing, right? And
Mm,
the huge takeaway of Move 37 is that Go players, they were kind of revealed this new dimension of how to play Go.
mm.
It's so powerful what you can do with the like synergy of human and AI creativity. And that's truly what I believe this is.
That's so beautiful. I'm not gonna lie. That's so it's so like chef's kiss, like elegant. I like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of the basis principle behind it.
For real. And to that point of like human AI synergization or whatever it is, I forget. This is what happens when you get like brain rot. But like I think it was like a real,
I my brain is rot, don't worry.
but like it's a real something I saw. I can't tell you the source. I just know it was Steve Jobs back in like 1990 something or whatever, and he was calling the personal computer the 21st century equivalent of the bicycle in terms of the way that it like amplifies and like synergizes like something that we're already somewhat decent at like as humans. Because I think like yeah, like the overall like story arc of the like piece of content I had watched was like okay, they had done a study of like the movement efficiency of a bunch of different animals. Like a condor had one, and then there's like of like a fish, like a bird, like a different types of animals, like how efficient, like how much energy expenditure does it take for an animal to get from point A to point B. And then like humans were like mids, like literally like if it was like a tier list, we're like C rank or something like that. But then like human with bike more than doubles what was at top, and it's like real. And
Yeah.
it's like basically like humans, like our advantage is that since we expect into intelligence, we get to create things that like synergize with what we're like naturally good at to like amplify it. And he's like, okay, the personal computer was that for like because like this is him like 1990, so like mind you, it's not the computers weren't even tough for real, but like he's like, okay, this is what it's going to be. And then now I'm like, because I don't think he like really predicted AI that like as much as it seems like it's going to be heading towards now. And I feel like that's the like if yeah, the computers were a bike, I guess this is like I don't know, a speed bike. I don't know, an e-bike.
I got you. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love that. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that for sure. So
Oh, and then another question I wanted to ask is like, are you scared of like Terminator or like the like or
Okay, I'm actually that what a great question. There's so many ethical implications, right? I mean, that happens every time there's something new in the horizon of technology. There's so many questions. And in many ways, like one, I'd like to start off with because I'm working in entertainment, the technology that I have, I'm like thankful to say that like it isn't as consequential as other things. Like there's not a rocket ship impending due to my code, or it's not anything of that level of responsibility, but I do acknowledge that there are a lot of responsibilities for what I am creating. Um, and one of them is that after talking to a lot of writers and artists, a lot of them are very hesitant about this technology. And I think, I mean, Terminator, with like robots taking over, is kind of the gist there, and the general fear that a lot of people have, especially if you're in vulnerable positions of creating things that current AI is now producing. My general philosophy for that is in the way that I've structured this, I don't believe this takes away from anything of what creators do. By creators, I mean like writers. Because they still have access to the art that they do. I think my platform just that just bridges, allows beginners to start somewhere, essentially. So that's what I have to say in that component. And what I'm doing isn't necessarily like generative art in that sense. Like, for example, I built AI systems to be able to deploy different scenes, but none of those are necessarily AI generated, at least for now. And that's for a very intentional purpose of one, quality control, but also the ethical implications of what it means to just generate art. A lot of
Mm.
artists are not happy with that. And that is something I respect, especially because those are a large majority of people in my community that I'm trying to target. Um, so there's that. And then another ethical implication of like using AI, especially with a narrative, is like, okay, what if it goes batshit crazy? And there's misalignment between the stories that I want to tell versus how people maybe hack it to say whatever they want to say. That's obviously a huge question that isn't quite solved in the technology, which is why, like, at least what I'm creating, I'm putting a lot of guidelines on the quality control. So in that sense, there's that. In general, my like perspective on evolving technology, I don't know. I'm not. Have you seen Black Mirror?
Yeah, isn't it? I've seen an episode, I think.
Okay. All right, you gotta let me know when you watch and get to the concept of a cookie, where essentially they create an agent of you, like a virtual agent of you. Or yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, that's already starting to be done. I don't quite know how to feel about it yet. What about you? Are you pretty optimistic, pessimistic?
I think I lean slightly pessimistic, but I still like the caveat is like I don't know because it's like I hope like everything is just like a oh maybe, but it's like basically my understanding of it is like there's a level of like human touch that like you'll just be able to like sense is my hope. Like there's something intrinsic to like going through this specific experience as a living person that just a generative model wouldn't be able to like necessarily replicate. Like the essence of art is the humanness of it, and that's a I hope. I'm not gonna lie, because I don't maybe because like that agent stuff too is like okay, but like if this thing is trained on like all like because for me like I journal pretty heavily too, so it's like
Mhm.
when I journal, I like that's literally my direct thoughts. I'm just thinking like if someone were to upload this into an AI, you would get a pretty decent like you'll get it from like different sides of like this is how I'm thinking. But
Yeah,
that, mm, I was gonna
I
say to that point though, like you wouldn't necessarily like what you can account for is the different things that I'm going through slash experiencing. Because like, okay, you have a snapshot of what I was like at 20 years old, but say next, like I don't know, like say my leg gets blown off the next day, and then it fundamentally changes the way I think now. That AI model is now inaccurate. and it's like you can't like I don't know,
Account for that happen unless you're constantly updating it in
like
some
uploading straight from my brain. So I'm like, okay, there's gonna be a part of me. There's like that.
area.
Okay, I still get to keep a little bit of my own. I guess like I don't know, like fingerprint. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I guess a big question of it is like how, I mean, the whole point is like how believable can you make these AI agents? And perhaps there is a point where it's indistinguishable. And I think it's philosophically a tough question, an existential one as well, which is like, okay, so it's easy to say that they're not human because they're mechanically created by us as well, and you can very clearly see that they're not human. But what happens when that becomes so undetectable? And perhaps they start thinking for themselves, like every single thought iterates into their own training, and thoughts become original. Like, what is the line between what we experience as humans in terms of how our brain works and theirs? Is it a soul? Is it, I don't know, you know?
Because like, what happens when it says, "Hey, yo, don't turn me off, bro, please."
Yeah, like what is consciousness? Don't turn me off. Okay. You're trained to say that, but like, aren't we in some senses?
Yeah, dang, bro. You going to like, there's a book. There's like the Ender's Game trilogy, like by like Orson Scott Card, and I think it's like in I forget. It's either second or third book when they introduce like I don't even know. I forget the specifics of it. It's looking like really crazy, but it's like the consciousness that is like his computer or whatever it is. Like Ender, the main character, has like this assistant, and it's like a fourth. It was like a different level of consciousness or whatever it was that was like particularly I forget exactly. Like it's really crazy, like sci-fi like explanation of why it works, but pretty much it's that same sort of like oh yeah this will become a different like species like similar to like if we were found aliens but it's like
Mm,
we helped bring them along. And I'm not gonna lie, to that point, like why I'm like pessimistic about it is because like I don't see any situation where something needs sentience. See the type of shit we're on as like a human species, it doesn't say, all right, the most logical thing is to get rid of these niggas, they're trash. I'm like,
yeah. It's like yeah, I think it'd be pretty logical to get rid of humans from the earth, honestly. Like,
I was like, oh yeah.
um, but yeah, I think in that sense, I don't feel too strongly like I can see it going either way. I mean, I just don't think about it that much, but it is a huge problem that I acknowledge. I think there's a lot of cool things that can happen with like AI systems gaining more vision, bridging that with robotics. But there are a lot of scary thoughts that come with that as well. And it's all about like how can we get these models to align with us? It's kind of an interesting thought, which is there's this concept of AI alignment, right? Where it's like you try to instill human values in these models. Like you yeah, but in that sense, it's like, well, one, how do you define human behavior? And also, do we really want it to behave like a human? Because like a human would do some fucked up shit, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe perhaps that it's like, I don't know. There's some reservations there as well, but I'm not too much of a pessimist. I see the concerns and sometimes I feel them. It's like, oh shit, like this could be really bad. But I do believe that things like development should be taken slowly.
No, you know, it's so interesting. Like you mentioned, like, oh yeah, like trying to instill human values into this robot, but I'm like, or this AI or model, whatever it is. But that's so subjective to like the human doing that. Because like, do we have a collective like, okay, the robots or like
I-
the AI should think like this because these are the good values. Like,
Yeah,
okay, try to get people to agree on that.
yeah, like also how do you like substantiate that across cultures, you know?
Yeah, because I'm like if the Nazis was doing this, that would be a very different AI. I'm
Literally.
not gonna
Um,
lie.
what's the shoot. Have you seen the movie Arrival?
I have not. I feel so uncultured. I'm sorry.
No, no, I that's totally me, but my friends made me watch an Arrival and it was a great movie. So the premise of it is that these aliens come, right? These like kind of unknown beings, and they communicate with the US, but they're also in communication with China. and they don't have the same communication as us, like machines do. For example, like they don't speak English. They kind of have a different sense of communicating with each other and understanding the world, but they're ultra intelligent. They just don't operate like us. Um, and it was fascinating with the way that they perceive us is dependent on like the values that we express to them. Like I think this was like a very nationalistic view. So what happened was the Americans in this movie um, were kind of like teaching the language to these beings, to these outside beings, and then the Chinese government were playing chess with it. Uh, Essentially like teaching it there is a winner and there is a loser. And I think that is a concept that can be applied here as well.
Mm, that like I forget the name of it. I think it's like linguistic relativism or something like that, where it's like the like specifically how like communication has different implicit like connotations that go along with it, and it's like that you don't notice it because that's just the water you swim in. Because I think it's like the easiest example of it, I think is like, oh yeah, the Eskimo people have like 7 different words for snow because like their world is fundamentally like this means different things to us, and so we're gonna have more specificity along those lines. And it's like versus it's just snow to me, bro. I don't got no like like snow and then you get sleep. I guess like that's the level of resolution that the English language seems to go.
Yeah, and across languages, that's so interesting. So I speak Chinese and English, and with like, you're able to tell with how the Chinese language is formatted and its vocabulary, how rich the history is, and its nuance of
Mm.
human nature. Like there's a lot of adages that are like one sentence long that capture human nature so well. And they're so silly. It's like, for example, using your chicken feather as a sword. So basically, you're a chicken, you're not that powerful, but you think of yourself as really highly, and you're using it as a sword to tell your soldiers to charge forward. Like that's one example, for example. And yeah, this whole conversation is also reminding me of the three body problem. Have you seen that? This one you've got to read or watch. Yes,
Okay.
no? You just have to. You would like it.
Okay. It
But
sounds so familiar. I'm like, have I don't think I have
basically there's these aliens in some
though.
way, and they were really friendly to us at first. Like it was like a symbiotic relationship, and then all of a sudden the human shows like, oh, of course we lie and we get rid of them, they're our enemy. And then the aliens are like, oh shit, that's how you think of it, you're untrustworthy actually, and we're not going to work with you anymore. So back to the whole AI model talk, and if that ever transpires to be robotic, and I hope hopefully that doesn't happen.
Real. Yeah, because I'm just like realistically, like I don't think like because if it, especially like the level of intelligence, whatever that the AI we have right now is showing, like if we're going band for band, like if we try to go up against it, bro, we lose. I'm not gonna lie, like because it's just it's like okay, I hit nukes, you guys lose. It's like okay, damn.
Yeah, I don't know if you like at all like entertain yourself with like some of the conspiracy theories, but I mean there's a handful of them. This is a really fascinating conversation. Let's totally talk about this another time, but I want to be respectful of your time. So like if there's any other topics that you wanted to discuss,
Hmm,
think like maybe we can talk more about like Stanford, what getting in looked like for me and stuff like that, or
got you. I also specifically I wanted to talk about how like you have the time lapses of you going like incredibly long of just like working, right?
that's so
I just
funny.
I wanted to ask a bit like how do you manage those? Like how do you like develop that stamina in terms of like direct focus?
Um, honestly, I think the most useful answer for people who also want to just sit down and do work is you have to position yourself in that way. So what that means is like, for example, I can't always do that time lapses. For example, like sometimes I just can't sit still. So like I get myself to work out or something so that I can sit still physically. Um, and in many other ways, it's also about removing distractions. Like sometimes it's not about pure discipline, it's about what you do to remove obstacles, is what it's the true solution, honestly. Like instead of just willpowering it, it's like, okay, what is your problem? Okay, I'm picking up my phone and that interrupts my work. Okay, set it up on a time lapse so you can't touch your phone. Um, like it's worked really well for me in the fact that like the whole reason why I document is a large part of it, some part of it is for accountability. And having a time lapse is a way to keep myself accountable. It's like shit, no way I'm gonna stop the time lapse. It's not worth it. So I'm just gonna do work. And it's not something I actively think about. It's just, oh, my phone's not right next to me. So
Mm.
one component of it. I think the other component is also just mental. Like I have so much fun when I do work. Um, and it's kind of funny because it's like, dude, this girl is like working 17-hour days, 16, and I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly. Like if I could do that, I would for so long. I mean, I probably need some socialization and balance. It is like I cannot say enough how fun it is to me to work. Um, and that comes in like mostly it's like right now I'm prioritizing startup work. Like my job is just fun. It's so fun. I mean, it's funny because I like spent like 300 hours on Sims growing up, and I remember while playing, I'm like, oh my God, I'm wasting so much time. This is so bad. And now it's like, oh, this is work.
Yeah.
That full circle moment that you have, like that's why I definitely understand like do something that you like. And honestly, actually that's kind of bullshit. I think you can trick yourself into doing into what you like. Like for example, if you're doing schoolwork, you can trick yourself into thinking it's really fun. Um,
I
and
guess what does that look like?
I mean, the reason why I love CS so much is also because it's so much fun to me. Like, and
Mm.
I love coding heavy classes because it's so fun. I like that is so fun is the one sentence I would use to describe all this is I can sit down and I want to work on these things. So if you can find that, then that's the only way. I don't think I could force myself to sit down and do something I don't want. And maybe if it's not fun to you, it can be really important to you. Like why like this is okay, it's chemistry, it's not fun, but what's important to you? Like why are you pursuing this? Why are you taking this class? What are the opportunities you can gain from this? And then that sense of importance is also motivation. So you just got to find that momentum and motivation.
Yeah, I think it's also like another thing, like this is going back, like look to the beginning when I was like, oh yeah, we're really twin for real. Because you mentioned like I don't actually like school. It's just like it's the means to which I get this thing done. And I feel like a bit different, I guess like in terms of like how do I get myself to sit down, it's more reminiscent to that, like, oh, having a strong clarification of like why you're doing it. Because like I think I don't know, like I do like that. I do like the being able to create things of engineering, but like slogging through the math is freaking painful to me. Like I don't know if it's like, oh, like I don't like I'm not doing the math problems and be like, oh yeah, this is fun. It's like, oh fucking brother again. But it's like I like being able to after like, okay, I understand this principle, now I can apply it. That's the fun part.
Yeah, I think it's unrealistic to think that everything you're doing you're gonna love. I
Yeah.
honestly think you have like that's what true conviction is being able to push through that. Like I do a lot of things, a lot of my work, I'm lucky in the sense that I have a lot of fun, but that's not the case for everyone, and it's also not the case for me with all the work that I have to do. So sometimes you just got to push through it, and if you're lucky, you get to find things that are really fun to you.
Mhm. Another thing is like because it seems like you like have been like excelling for a pretty long time, but I guess like times when it may get a bit rougher or like you run into a word block, like how like do you have a system for managing those? And if so, what does that look like?
Work block?
Work block and or like yeah, I guess it's like the failure question. Like what do you do in times of like, oh shit, I messed up or like this isn't going how I wanted? Like what do you like how do you bounce back from those?
Um I'm having a hard time answering your questions because I don't think I've ever felt like that.
For real. I'm just a winner. Tight shit.
Like, no, not in the sense that I haven't failed or fucked up in that many capacities or ever felt down. Like, there's been so many times where it's like, oh, what am I doing, or something doesn't go my way, which like that's naturally going to happen. Um, it's that my personal approach to it, like I think it's the way that I think about success. Success
Mm,
to me isn't accomplishment driven whatsoever. It's what I do on the day-to-day basis. If I'm winning the day, if I'm doing everything I possibly can, that's success to me. Like those are the people that I look up to as well, as people who are readily pushing themselves every single day in whatever capacity and direction. Is that like unequivocally like unlimited passion. And so if I'm ever feeling down, the way I think about it is like I'm gonna be okay. Like it really sucks, and sometimes it really sucks. It sucks a lot. Um, but it's not gonna suck forever. Like it's
mm.
gonna get better. What is the most productive thing I can do right now? Um, so when things and also like naturally when I do have problems, it also comes down to like a lot of anxiety. Like it's like, oh, this isn't turning out for me. Why? Like what am I not getting done? And that anxiety is just another sense of fuel. Like it's never like, oh my God, I need to take a break. If I take a break, I'm literally gonna have a heart attack because of how stressed I'm gonna be from not being productive in solving those problems. So at least that's how my relationship is with my mental health. But like that's very personal to different people. But uh, like I just think it's a waste. I think it's important to sit down and think about things and reflect. For some time to sulk. I love sulking. It's great. Like sometimes I just bathe in my misery and whatever problem it is, and then try that. So it doesn't happen for very long, and nor do I ever think about how I pick myself out of like slumps because I just don't get into slumps.
Also, okay, I was gonna ask, like, you mentioned like the people that you look up to the most have that same sort of mentality. Like, do you have, I guess, like core people that you would like say you admire, or like people whose paths you're like, oh yeah, that's really cool.
There, that is actually one of my goals, is honestly to find a mentor where it's like, I want to be you.
Mm.
Um, and there's a lot of people that I admire a lot in what they've accomplished or their vision. Um, like Rockefeller, for example, was a man of principles. One of my favorite books is a biography called Titan. And it's one on Rockefeller, his upbringing. And he was a deeply religious person, and he never compromised on that. Through every
Mm,
act in his beliefs, there was this underlying principle of he believes God has favored him and given him wealth because God knows that he's going to give it all back. Um,
mm,
that was one of his sayings. And so loosely, there's a lot of role models and successful people in that sense that I look up to. But yeah, that's my relationship with that. And even just like the people around me too. I see a lot of successful, admirable traits in people, and whenever I see those, I just try to learn from it.
real. Hmm. Feel free to like not answer this question because it is a bit personal, but I was going to like to that like faith piece and just in good faith, I'll go first. Oh shit.
You're good.
You, but I was gonna say like
Want
in
to get that?
say again.
Did you just if someone knocked on your door, feel free.
Yeah, okay. It can be like two
Yeah, no stress.
you okay. I'm trying to think. There's like one more question I got in the pocket. I'm gonna end it with it. No, you cool, man. But give me like 5 minutes. I swear to God, I'm gonna do that. This is gonna be a fire ass question. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. Okay. Pretty much. Yeah.
I just want to give you a heads up. I'm on no time constraint. I just need to go by 5:50.
Okay. Cool. The question was, oh yeah, relationship to religion. If you feel comfortable answering, and then I was gonna go first in good faith. Basically, like, cause I was like, yeah, like 14, 15, like due to family circumstances and like that underlying hunger, it was also accompanied by that feeling of like nothing cares about me, slash this world is effed up and nobody gives a shit. So it's like, okay, pretty staunchly atheist. And then like over time, slash with more exposure, because it was also like tainted a bit by like my relationship with my like bio dad. And it's like I was kind of like projecting that onto relationship to Heavenly Father. But basically, I the reason why I'm asking the question of religious faith, because in the way that you described Rockefeller's confidence, I was wondering if it influenced yours in any way. Because you're like, there's no way that I don't do this, and it's like, I guess like where does like is that sourced by like religious faith at all, or no?
My relationship with faith is an interesting and ongoing question for myself. So, background there is so neither of my parents are religious, but I was sent to a Catholic middle school and high school, because that's just where you get the best education in Las Vegas. And I genuinely fell in love with the community and the religion in some ways, more so the community. I think I personally had a really good experience. I know this isn't the case for many people, but I felt very spiritually deeply and connected to God through all the stories. I think like you know how we talk about, and you're gonna understand exactly what I mean. You know how we talk about this passion that we have,
Mm,
and this anger kind of for the justice in the world or things that are wrong, the so many things that are wrong. Um, when we learned a lot about Jesus specifically, so the faith that I align myself with is Catholicism. When we learned about Jesus and kind of heard about the stories, it's like you learn about this person who is this entity that is so self-sacrificial, and everything it stands for is just love, putting everything else above yourself. And I think the modern world, honestly, today, like especially with our culture, like pop culture, it's very much like, yeah, put yourself number one. Like you need to love yourself first. I kind of hate that actually. Um,
mm,
I genuinely think you should. Sorry, I don't think you should be. I think my personal belief is that
yeah,
I strongly believe in serving other people first. Um, and in many ways, like I just became so moved by the work of kind of how they describe Jesus and God. And my like personal belief in terms of like the belief system is I still will say I'm not completely sold on the religion. It's really hard for me to say that because it's like you believe and it feels so half-assed to be able to admit that that you're fully in. It's hard to admit you're fully in, and it's an ongoing spiritual journey. But like end of the day, I do believe in a higher power that is God, a single entity. Whether a single person or not, I don't know. I don't think I believe strongly in like a certain organized religion, but I do believe in God and that the world is beautiful and that God is loving. Like that is what I've established for myself. And I think I say that because I've experienced just so many beautiful moments in life and I'm so in love with life. Um,
for real.
through all the hard shit and like the ugly side of the world, but I still firmly believe in that. And in the ways that I believe in religion, it mostly applies to trying to be as selfless and loving as possible to whoever I come across. So that's my relationship with religion. And um, it became particularly strong when I was in middle school and high school. So I played tackle football for a while. Um,
For real. That's so cool.
Thanks. You should meet me in person. I'm literally like I'm super small. 5'2", okay. I think the last thing most people expect from me is like to be on a all boys like tackle football team. But like I think you can imagine I was probably pretty scared, and so naturally I became closer with God. Um, and I feel
For real.
it's like, please God, like
Don't
what
let this
am I
fucking.
doing? And in many ways, like you see a lot of people turn towards religion when they're scared. But it was such a beautiful time in my life that I had. Um, I'd say my relationship now with God is a lot more spotty, but it's something I still have to figure out.
Once again, why are we the same person?
Oh,
It's crazy.
so funny. That's awesome. What's your, tell me more.
So, like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the story that I've been using to describe my path the most recently is just like I'm very much on the Wayward Son arc, and I don't it's not I'm not ready to go back to the crib yet. And so like I do feel like there is going to be a homecoming eventually because it's like the trajectory of my life has been like sliding more towards like, all right, maybe there's something to this. All right, maybe it's like all right, cool. And
Yeah.
particularly, what's interesting is like you mentioned like the how like everyone goes to God when they're scared, and like there's a saying of like there's no atheists in foxholes, and it's like
So
I think
what?
there's no atheists in foxholes. So basically, a foxhole is like where like in like World War I and like two, that's where like people would be like in the bunkers and whatever and like shooting or whatever. It's like when you're in that situation, like you're about to die, like or like not necessarily, but like most likely about to die. You're not sitting there thinking about like, man, you're not thinking about existentialism. You're thinking like, please God, don't let me die.
Yeah.
And so I think like my version of that, and like also like seeing the beauty of life, and like basically it's been a cascading series of events, but one of the most jarring was like summer after senior year, like June 20th, 2023. That date is forever burnt into my head because I got like into a really bad car accident, like bad. And like the like bro, like mind you, I'm in like a Toyota Tacoma. It's like a boxy silver truck. I don't know. I because like my memory is spotty of like the actual like incident itself, but like the way my door got boomed, it like I got T-boned on driver's side, and it's like I wake up in bro. Speaking of like that fear, I wake up in the ambulance, disoriented as shit. Like mind you, like the last thing I remember is I'm dropping off my friend, and then like we're driving away. Or like I'm driving away. Black. Wake up, looking up at the roof of an ambulance. Where's my phone? Like grits. And like,
Did it hurt
say
when you
again?
did it hurt in those first few moments? Like,
Nah. The first thing that went through my like the first thing I did was like I don't know, it happened so fast. I guess like the lost that process, but I remember I just moved. I moved my fingers and my toes because I'm just like, bro, no fucking way I'm paralyzed or some shit. Like that's the what went through my head, and it's like that's how you check like can I still move my extremities? And like the wave of relief, like they moved, and I'm like, like bruh, and I'm like that isn't like what was that except for like that's a hand that caught you, little nigga. I'm not gonna lie. That's like that was like the hand of God, I think, or like that's how it like that's kind of the way that I've come to parse that incident. Because like, bro, I look at the picture like every whenever I'm like I feel like I'm out being a bum or whatever. It's like, bro, you literally respawned. Like you died. You died and you
so
literally
funny.
died and came back.
You're so funny. I think that's a little blasphemous, actually.
I apologize.
No, that's so funny. You spawned. Oh my God.
Bro, like bro, I don't know. I think of life like a video game a lot, and I'm like, dang, bro, you gotta one up. You really got like one of those like, all right, cool, you get back. I'm like, oh, and it's like, because I don't know, I like mind you, it's spotty and like very black, but I remember like some version of like seeing past events or something. Like when I'm just like in not coming back, I'm in limbo. Like after I got boomed, my memory's gone. But like people said that I was like secondhand accounts or whatever. Like I got up, like I crawled out of the car, and like I was still like walking around, but like I don't remember any of that. Apparently, I was like talking to the paramedics too, nothing. And so I'm
Wow.
like, that shook me like to my core because like mind you, I put a lot of like my identity on my like mental capacity, like
Yeah.
the fact that I can think and like, and I was like, it's just not available to me. Like no matter how hard I tried, those are gone. And it's like that like there's a higher power in terms of like that is simply without like outside of the span of like things that I can control. Like I have that mentality of like, oh, I want to be able to fix this or control this, or, like bring things within my domain of control. You can't control that. You could have died. You didn't control that either. You just got lucky. It's like, oh, maybe there is this. Maybe there's something looking out. Maybe.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm so glad you're okay.
Thank
Holy
you.
shit, what a story. Sounds like a great call it common app essay.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, damn.
Let me
But
milk this.
like after I graduated, I'm like, shit, that would have been great.
That would have been a great milking the trauma story. Oh my God.
No more.
That's wow. What a story. Yeah. For sure. I think in those moments it's like, wow. You just feel it. There's no, it's like a very undescribable feeling. And yeah, I think there's a lot of arguments. Like the reason why I believe so heavily in like the greater power period is just like I don't like not that there's scientifically unexplainable things. I don't think there's any contradiction between science and God, the existence of a God at all. I think like if anything, science is the means that God moves. Um, that's my take. And yeah, like even
Bro.
everything is able to like you're able to explain everything with science, I still believe God has a hand in that. Um, so wow.
I think like because I had that sort of like for if they were in conflict for me for a while, but I think like the perspective that helps me like meld it together is like okay, it's looky like it's like someone like made the like they made a puzzle that you're solving. So it's like yeah, the answers are there because they put it there. Not that they put it there, but it's like yeah, there's principles to the design that they created, and we are able to discover and like give those names, and that's what we call science.
Yeah. I don't know. The world is just beautiful. Gotta thank someone for it.
Oh, cool. Okay. And so like this was terrific. I'm not gonna lie, this is great. I'm so glad that like I know you as a person because like why are we looking to it? That's so cool.
I know. I like we get so well, actually. I mean, I think there's a lot we haven't even uncovered, like due to like the nature of like how we're meeting and stuff like that and why we're meeting. But like genuinely, you're so cool, man.
Bro, likewise. Okay, this is just I'm just glad I made a friend. This is cool.
I'm just so glad we talked. Yeah. 100%.
So I can say we should definitely do this again at some point as like another check-in. But to like wrap up this conversation in particular, I was gonna ask, do you have any like words, whether it's like a quote, like Bible verse, whatever it may be, just like any like principle or like idea that you like refer back to a lot?
I'm gonna say this one because I just watched it on a reel this morning.
Real.
Um, uh, is essentially the gist of it was that the people who excel the most, like we're talking about, like Serena Williams, Kobe, Tom Brady, the people who have excelled highest in their domains and fields, like who are well acclaimed as being the greatest in some sense or the other, they also like hold a record in some sort of failure in that domain as well. And it truly is just like the expert fails more than the beginner ever tries. And I think through the work that I'm doing now, it's like to start something, to do something, you literally just have to do it. You can plan as much as you want, but you don't know shit until you're actually doing it. Like genuinely read as much as you want, but like it is honestly somewhat paralysis. Plan as much as you want, but I'm telling you, like the you just gotta do it to know. And just doing things brings you so many opportunities of just learning. And honestly, that itself is a reward itself. So just do it. Fuck it.
Shout out Shiloh, bro.
No, literally, like if I'm ever on the verge of doing something, and often if I'm doing something really cool, the last thing I say before doing it is like, fuck it, why not? Like literally.
Tight shit. Real. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Okay,
you
thank
taking the
you
time.
so much for making this happen.
And bro, this is gonna be so beautiful when we're both like 45 or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Yes.
I love the internet, man.
Oh
Let's
my gosh.
go.
Speaking of, I have the worst memory ever, which doesn't go hand in hand when you try to document each moment. Would you like to say hi to the vlog?
Yeah, definitely. What's good?
All right, I gave you some words, you can give me some words.
Well, like intro or like define words. Yo, what's good, vlog? My name is Ruben Steven. No, that was bad. I need to. Okay. Look, give me a little coaching. Like, what does the word seem like? Seem. Oh, okay. Got you. All right, what's good, vlog? The words I got are the magic you're seeking lies in the work you're avoiding. And I think it goes like hand in hand with like the just do it mentality because the reason why you just do it is because that's where all of the real like growth, like whether it's failure or success, that's where the growth lies.
Ah, see, you killed it. No coaching needed.
Real. Okay. I'm gonna go, I need to go get my friends because I forgot to be. But
Likewise, likewise. I can't believe we talked for so long, honestly. All right. Peace out, Ruben. That was awesome.
peace.